Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about some news that dropped in Comic-Con for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, aka the MCU. More specifically, what's going to be in the future for it, in particular the next phase being Phase 4. We got news about the 5 movies and 5 TV series that are going to be included in Phase 4. I just basically want to run down them and kind of share some of my thoughts about it. One of said movies is obviously the Black Widow movie we've heard about. Some of the details that have come out, obviously a lot of stuff had already said that it was a prequel, and we are getting a prequel, but not a super far in the past prequel, which surprised me. Basically, apparently, it's taking place a little bit after Civil War, which I find fascinating, because there have been multiple points throughout the MCU where it seems like Natasha was kind of off on her own for a little bit, kind of away from the Avengers, so it kind of makes sense to kind of pick specific points in time to kind of jump in certain things. But I'm wondering, in the grand scheme of things, why Civil War specifically? There was some stuff in the article I was reading I won't get into too much because it could potentially be spoilers, but basically it hints to some stuff popping up in the Black Widow movie because of comic book knowledge that people have. It could potentially lead to some interesting developments that basically they're adding Black Widow here, not just for, you know, like obviously it's just, you know, to tell this story, but also it is going to set up stuff in the MCU's future. Like I said, I don't want to get into it. If you're curious about it, I highly recommend you look into it yourself, but in case you don't want to spoil something that potentially could be in the movie for yourself, then I wouldn't read too much on it. But some very interesting things. We also learned, kind of a spoiler in itself, but I was still kind of like, whoa, Taskmaster, which I was like, what? That's crazy. It's interesting because like Taskmaster is not a character I'm that familiar with, but I know about him because, interestingly enough, because of Spider-Man. The first time I came across the character was in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon. He was someone that Peter kind of crossed paths with. Well, Peter and the team came across paths with multiple occasions. He's even in the PS4 Marvel Spider-Man game too. It's just kind of like a side thing, but that's pretty interesting to me. It's like, yo, I'm curious, is he going to have like the full, you know, Taskmaster get up? If you're unfamiliar with like Taskmaster's abilities, basically anything he sees once he can immediately copy, which is going to be interesting seeing him go toe-to-toe with Black Widow. She's a very like hands-on fighter. It's going to be interesting to see her kind of match toe-to-toe with him because he goes toe-to-toe with a lot of superheroes because he can copy their moves, making him very hard to take down. So I think that's going to be really interesting. I wonder, is he already going to be Taskmaster? We're going to see him grow to be, you know, so I mean, it makes sense too, because he's kind of a mercenary, so him bumping heads with a spy like Natasha, pretty dope. There's also, obviously, we've also heard news about this, the Eternals, which we got a look at the cast, which normally I'm not the type of person that gets caught up in like casting and stuff like that, but I'm still like, yo, that's dope. From what I was reading, there wasn't a lot of information about this, but basically this is like, apparently what they were saying, like it seemed like some like Eternals who are basically heroes who apparently have been walking amongst humans. So it might be a thing of like, the Eternals have always been here on Earth. They've just been like kicking it, like hiding out amongst humanity. Like, oh, if there's anything that steps up, let the humans take care of it. I mean, we call them Eternals and stuff like that. So I'm assuming they have some form of immortality, maybe. But it seems like there's some form of heroes. So, I mean, like I said, that was just based on from what I was reading. It could be a situation of like, maybe they're off in space and then we get them landing on Earth maybe, and they've been here the entire time, or what. Like I said, from what I was reading, there wasn't a lot of details, but I'm really fascinated to watch this movie because it's the one I know little to nothing about. To be fair, it's not like I know a whole bunch about Marvel anyway, but still it's very exciting to kind of, you know, see who they are, get to know them, and see where they fit into the grand scheme of everything. Are we going to do the situation of them being here on Earth the entire time? Like I said, because now I'm sitting here thinking about it, it's like, I'm wondering, is that referencing them just specifically in the comic books, or is that the context of what the movie's going to be about too, is the fact that they've been here the entire time walking amongst humans. Either way, I'm excited about it. Next one up is the Shang-Chi and the 10 Rings. Many different interesting things. One, we're getting our first, like, I guess, full-blown martial artist, I guess, added to the MCU. Interestingly enough, I guess, technically, you can make the argument Iron Fist was like the first one. Well, I guess, technically, Daredevil was, because, you know, Matt knows martial arts, but I guess amongst the movies, and Natasha knows how to fight. Would that be considered martial arts, her fighting style? I would assume it would be, but I could be wrong. Nevertheless, I'm going on a huge tangent. Seems very interesting. It seems like we're obviously going to get like a very like martial arts heavy like MCU movie, which is pretty dope. Some casting announcements. The big thing to pull away from it is the 10 rings. Obviously, this is alluding to the Mandarin, which the Mandarin was always kind of like, oh yeah, the Iron Man 3 thing of like, you know, played by Sir Ben Kingsley, and he was like a fake Mandarin. So it's interesting to see like, oh, now we're potentially getting the real Mandarin and what that means, like how that's going to tie back into Iron Man 3. Is it just going to be that Sir Ben Kingsley's character just adopted that? Like obviously it was like, oh, we just pulled from a legend, and maybe, you know, maybe that plays a part in the movie being like, yo, people thought I was a legend. I was like, fine, I'm letting people think I'm fake. I get to stay hidden. It's kind of interesting because I don't know if this character is typically tied to Iron Man or not. The most times I've seen this character pop up, it's been connected to Iron Man. Like obviously in Iron Man 3, but also there was an animated series that was on Nicktoons. Like season 1 was in 2009 and the second season was in 2011. I want to say it was like, wasn't it like the New Adventures of Iron Man or something like that? It was probably not that. The Invincible Iron Man, I forgot what it was. I'll add an annotation for it, but the Mandarin ended up being like one of the main antagonists in that. So I'm curious, are they going to, like, because of the Iron Man 3 connection and because of that, I'm curious if it's going to be a situation of like, no, like there's going to be a Tony Stark connection in that regard, or no, just be like, you know, it's just like I said, it was a myth and a legend. It just happened to be used, kind of like a red herring of like, oh, it's not really the Mandarin, but we are planning to use that later on potentially. I don't know. I don't know anything about the Mandarin. I do know that the 10 rings kind of, I don't know if they're necessarily on like the Infinity Stones level, but they are pretty powerful. I think they might be on the more mystical side of things. Another movie announced is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is interesting, which I find really interesting. Now I'm sitting here thinking about, because I didn't even think about that until now, like, most of the Marvel movies have subtitles with their sequels. Like Iron Man might be the only one that doesn't have subtitles for its subsequent sequels. Now I'm sitting here thinking about it. Maybe that'll be something they have to change later on because of everything that went down. But nevertheless, very excited about this. It didn't click my head until like, you know, before Comic-Con had happened. But it's like, right, it would make sense because obviously, you know, because of Spider-Man Far From Home, this is going to kind of be spoilers. So if you haven't seen Far From Home yet, basically it turns out the multiverse was a lie created by, you know, Mysterio, but that didn't mean the stuff that was presented wasn't true. Maybe this snap did tear open the multiverse, which once again, I'll point this out. I've talked about this before. I thought the multiverse was kind of already established because of Doctor Strange. I mean, he went like that. It was already an established thing, but I guess it wasn't. I don't know, because like, let's not forget, Dormammu is in the dark dimension, so I thought that was setting up the whole multiverse. Maybe that's setting up different dimensions, but maybe the multiverse is different from the different dimensions. Maybe that's like the parallel, like maybe that's the point. Because before now, like the multiverse in the sense that there's alternate timelines that are different but similar, that type of thing. Maybe that's more so. I don't know, like I said, I was under the impression and Doctor Strange kind of set that up. After subsequently rewatching it, kind of made me think that, but maybe I was just wrong. Obviously, Doctor Strange left a big cliffhanger with the character. What was his character's name? Mordo? Like he kind of shifted to more of a bad guy at the end of Doctor Strange, so I'm sure we're going to be picking up with that. But also, like, it makes sense that Doctor Strange kind of being connected to all of this would be like, oh, you know, connected to the multiverse and stuff like that. Something I was wondering about, because of all the Infinity Stones being put back where they were, does that mean he ended up getting the Time Stone back? I mean, I guess like it wouldn't make sense because, well, yeah, I forgot. I'm stupid. Yeah, right. Thanos ended up destroying the Time Stone. I forgot. He destroyed all the time. He destroyed all the Infinity Stones in this universe, which is interesting. That means they exist in alternate timelines, but not in this world anymore. Which even that makes you kind of go, wouldn't that kind of be an issue? I mean, obviously, once again, this Infinity Stones were used 4 different times, so maybe that'll play a role in something, but also probably that amount of energy just being wiped out from the universe probably throws things off balance. Maybe, potentially, I don't know. A really interesting thing is the fact is that Scarlet Witch is actually going to pop up. Did not expect that. I'm so, oh, that's so interesting, because this is going to be her first time kind of popping up outside of Avenger level movies. I say that to a certain extent because obviously her other appearance is in Civil War, which isn't an Avengers movie, but you know, a lot of people in their minds kind of treat it like an Avengers movie. Regardless, it's going to be interesting to see her kind of pop up in something that isn't like an Avengers movie. I'm curious to see what her role is going to be in that. It's interesting too, because I'll kind of circle back to this later on, but apparently what I was reading, the WandaVision show is actually going to be a lead into that movie, which I'm like, that's dope. Kind of doing what they already stated, that the TV shows are going to play an important role in kind of setting up stuff for like the future of the MCU movies and stuff like that. So that's going to be a prime example of that, which I'm so excited to kind of see what, you know, because we've never seen them really interact. I don't think they have crossed paths at all, because they definitely didn't meet in Infinity War. So I'd love to kind of, maybe he can help her understand her situation better. Maybe the whole multiverse situation plays a role in the WandaVision show, which I'll kind of get to later on. So maybe that's where the connection kind of comes in that regard. Once again, we'll see. Next up is Thor 4. It's called the subtitle, but instead of Thor 4, it's Thor Love and Thunder, which is very interesting. It seems like we're setting up Jane, you know, Natalie Portman's return to the MCU, and she's going to be Lady Thor. Also, big questions like, was she involved in this? I think that's also something we got to think about too, like, because yes, Far From Home answered a lot of questions for like certain levels of the blip, as they call it, but the question then becomes like, in the greater MCU, what were the effects? We'll probably see a lot more of that later on, like I was bringing up with the whole multiverse situation. So I was like, did Jane get snapped? Are we going to see characters from the, like, you know, first two Thor movies make a return? How does she become Lady Thor? That whole situation. I'm very interested to dive into that. And like I said, like, also it would probably be our way to look into Valkyrie and be like, yo, like, what's she doing as King of Asgard? You know, how has she taken a responsibility, as well as potentially what role will Thor have to play in this? Because the whole big question is like, okay, so where's Thor in everything? There was supposed to be potentially the Asgardians of the Galaxy, but that might not be happening with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 4. Is Thor 4 going to, well, Thor Love and Thunder, is that going to be set up for Guardians of the Galaxy 3? Like, where everything kind of stands in that regard? I don't know. I'm very interested to find out. That's it with the movies so far. Now let's shift over into TV shows. There's, first off, obviously, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. From what I was reading, it's something I had talked about before. Like, I'd heard some people talk and say that basically Zemo was going to return, the main antagonist of Civil War. He's going to return and be the main antagonist, potentially. At the very least, he's returning in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And it is more so, from the details that have kind of come out, more about like Sam and Bucky's relationship. Obviously, the new dynamic of, you know, going on without Cap. Obviously, Falcon getting used to his new shield and everything, being, you know, the new role of Captain America. And I'd already, you know, made a video where I kind of shared my thoughts and theories about, you know, what the show potentially could be about, what we could expect to see. And since I brought it up earlier, let's circle to WandaVision. From what I was reading, it was also, the article was saying that basically we're going to learn a lot more about Scarlet Witch. She's going to figure out more about herself. I think this is going to be our first, like, full-blown focus on her story, and potentially, and this once again kind of gets in the realm of spoilers and stuff like that, potentially her getting Vision back. Now that was a whole question too of like, okay, so how would you get Vision back? Because Endgame didn't resolve that of like, hey, Vision's back, but there's also the circumstances of like, once again, maybe this will play a role in the multiverse, and maybe like the Vision she gets isn't the Vision from this world, but from a different multiverse, hence why I'm saying that it might tie into Doctor Strange in that regard. I don't know. There was even a whole thought process that it was like, rumors had circulated that it was going to take place in the 50s potentially, so there might be some time traveling involved in that regard as well. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. An interesting side note too, from what I was reading, apparently Monica's going to pop up, you know, Maria's daughter from Captain Marvel, which I was wondering what role she was going to play, because obviously we're like 20 plus years in the future from Captain Marvel, even more so years down the road because of Endgame, because of the 5-year skip. So it's like, okay, I'm curious to see, you know, what's happened to her in that time frame, like, you know, because the photo I was reading, it's like, oh, she's following in her mom and Aunt Carol's footsteps. So I was like, what does that mean? I know that there's something specific about her character I avoid reading, but it's something from the comic books, like she might end up getting powers or something. Like I said, I know nothing about her character, because I saw a little bit. I was like, no, I don't want to read anything, because it might be spoilers for potential, like a Captain Marvel 2, which if she's in this, that might mean there might be a little something there. Like, have her and Carol met the entire time? Probably not, because I assume Carol's, the way things have kind of been set up, it seems like Carol hasn't been back to Earth Earth in all of that time? Potentially. Once again, that'll be some questions that have to be answered in the future. Then there's the Loki series, which obviously, as everyone kind of guessed, because of the scene in Endgame where they went back in time to 2012, the events of Avengers, that Loki grabbed the Tesseract, disappeared. So I was like, oh, that's an alternate timeline, and it seems like obviously that's what the Loki TV show is going to be about. Someone had brought up something I thought was kind of interesting, is even if that is the case, the Space Stone can't time travel, can it? So how does he do the whole time travel thing? Because that is what his show is about. So my question then becomes, did he take that Space Stone? Did he go gather up all the other Infinity Stones? And is that what he's doing? Like, is he going around causing more mischief? Well, obviously he's causing more mischief, but what I mean is he creating more alternate timelines because of what he's doing? I have no idea. Because the question then becomes like, do the Infinity Stones work in a different way than the quantum realm? Because maybe time travel works a little differently when you're dealing with the Infinity Stones rather than the quantum realm. They might go by different rules. So like the rules of Endgame might be pushed out the window because we're kind of dealing with like essentially space magic. Maybe that's how I've always looked at the Infinity Stones, as kind of a cross between magic and maybe there is some science to it. I don't know. I'm very interested to see what the Loki series ends up being about. Then there's the animated What If series. I think I've talked about this before. I might not have, but essentially it's multiverse type of stuff of like, oh yeah, here's some big differences. Well, here are the different paths of things could have gone for some of the heroes during the MCU. It is specifically not like a brand new thing. It is the MCU, but what ifs about, like, you know, if we went to alternate timelines and stuff, well, multiverse stuff. From what I was reading, all the characters that are going to pop up in it will be voiced by the respective actors, which is very interesting. So that's pretty dope. But I'm curious to see, like, obviously just because it's an animated format, which something I was reading made note of, like, oh yeah, this is the first animated thing made by Marvel Studios, which is pretty dope and interesting to think about. But regardless, it's like, will this have any ties into back into the MCU, or will it just stay its own like little package of like, oh, let's have fun, like maybe this will be their way to kind of explore maybe the multiverse without getting too crazy about it, or maybe it's set up to be like, okay, we're doing this now, it's kind of a fun little thing, we can do a little more with animation and slowly but surely eventually trickle out more about the multiverse. Or like I said, maybe it's just going to be its own package thing and we'll still get the multiverse trickled out, it just won't be connected to this What If cartoon. I don't know. And then finally there's Hawkeye, which it seems like, from what I was reading, it didn't specify when Hawkeye was taking place, but I'm assuming it is taking place, you know, after Endgame. Basically, he's training the next person to be Hawkeye, which I'm assuming is supposed to be his daughter, but maybe it's not. Maybe they're going down a different route of someone else doing it, because I think they were saying that everything was hinting, even though the people responding were hinting that it was a different character, someone named Kate Bishop. Once again, I'm not that well versed in Marvel stuff, so names being thrown out there, it's like, I don't know who that is. You get what I'm saying? So I said this video would be about Phase 4, but there were some details that also came out about potentially going beyond Phase 4. One of said things was that there is a Blade movie in the works with Mahershala Ali casting as Blade, and that's awesome in many different regards. If you're unfamiliar, you know, it's just kind of an interesting casting thing. Just one of those things that always comes up in my mind is the fact is that this isn't Mahershala Ali's first time technically in the MCU, because he played Cottonmouth on the Luke Cage show on Netflix. So obviously it's TV and movies and there's that, but it's just interesting because it's kind of like the same thing of like, even though it wasn't in the MCU, you know, both Michael B. Jordan and Chris Evans both played the Human Torch in their respective Fantastic Four movies, and then they came into the MCU. Him as Chris Evans as Captain America, and Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger. So that's just interesting, you know. So I'm very excited to see, you know, what this Blade movie looks like. How it's going to like move in with all of the other MCU stuff. It's interesting because they are working apparently on a Morbius movie on the Sony side of things. So obviously they're doing the share thing with Spider-Man. So it's like, if they do go through with the Morbius movie, would that be something that eventually gets potentially weaved into the MCU? That depends if they want to go down that route or not, I'm sure, but probably not. They'll probably just like keep Spider-Man stuff to Spider-Man, and just because I only know about the cartoon because of the animated series back in the 90s, where it's like Blade, Morbius, and Spider-Man, those storylines like all crossed together. But nevertheless, that's a huge tangent. I'm very excited to see what their Blade movie looks like and just what that means for the MCU as a whole. It seems like we might go down more the scarier horror side, which it seems like they're kind of setting that up potentially going forward with the TV shows like Ghost Rider and Hellstrom, that whole situation. So we'll see. And then there was also announcements potentially, like obviously like for a Black Panther sequel, we kind of figured, as well as a Captain Marvel sequel, we also figured. But there was also news about potentially like, hey, Phase 5 and beyond might lend itself into more of a, introducing the Fantastic Four, as well as what the whole mutants X-Men situation is going to be like. So it's nice to kind of like, yeah, can't, you know, of course those questions are going to come up and stuff like that, but like I said, I still feel that's still a good couple years away before we even get to that point. But it's still nice to see it kind of get mentioned and brought up. So obviously I haven't read through everything. These are just some of the quick notes I've kind of picked up on so far. Obviously, you know, subsequently, like since me recording this video, probably even more news has come out, and even beyond that, new information is probably going to drop slowly, you know, as time goes on. So in the grand scheme of things, it's interesting because we were kind of under the impression that like we're going potentially more cosmic going forward with the MCU, potentially at least where Phase 4 was, but it seems like Phase 4 is kind of balancing it out of being some cosmic stuff as well as some Earth stuff. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see, well, that balance of it, you know, if that balance keeps that way going forward, or whether it goes more cosmic. I mean, assuming like so much of your stuff is set on Earth, so of course you're always going to keep that Earth element. I just think it's all fascinating. So like I said, these are just my thoughts. Any comments down below? I'd love to get to know your thoughts about these announcements. What were you most excited about? You know, what were you surprised about? You know, had what you were excited about changed? Did you have some idea of like, oh, it would be this and that's what I'm excited about, but now these other announcements came out, so maybe you're more excited about something else? Just let me know your thoughts and everything in the comments down below. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.